Hello and welcome to our WWE Money in the Bank review. I'm here with Jimmy Korderas chatting about Sunday's show from Las Vegas, Nevada at the T-Mobile Arena.
Nice new arena.
Which I've got to say, Jimmy, as we are approaching closer and closer, this is the arena that the unmentionable Brock Lesnar will be fighting Mark Hunt in just a few short weeks. And zero mentions on WWE television of this, Jimmy.
It's unbelievable. Maybe somebody will cash in. No, you can't do that there, can you?
I don't think this non-mentioning of this fight, I don't think most people are really, maybe they don't care all that much. I'm just fascinated that this deal is happening and the WWE is not in full support of it.
You know what surprises me? That nobody has mentioned this other than now that you're talking about it. And it's something that doesn't even click into my mind while I'm watching the show, thinking to myself, they haven't even mentioned the Brock Lesnar fight. More people seem to be more upset at the fact that they don't mention the fact that AJ Styles and the Dudley Boys and Sting all appeared in TNA. They're more pissed about that than their biggest star, really.
We've had more mentions on WWE television in the last 3 weeks of PWG than we have Brock Lesnar versus Mark Hunt.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And how many times did they mention it?
Once.
Yeah.
However, if Brock wins this fight, what will that Raw be like the Monday after?
Oh, he went back to the UFC and conquered the toughest.
We're going to be subjected to this incredible feat, which it really is. If Brock Lesnar walks back in and beats Mark Hunt, what an unbelievable story.
Right.
But the WWE is, I think, very much hedging their bets here that if this doesn't come out with that outcome, it never happened.
Right.
It never happened. And for a company that just invest themselves so much into our social media power and just this massive media communications company, that we can take something so big and ignore its existence, which is what they have done so far since this announcement.
Yeah, and it seems to be working because, like you said, very few people are not talking about it. So maybe they're onto something here. Out of sight, out of mind.
They've done enough that they've acknowledged it on the website, and that's it. But I just find it interesting that it is not crossed onto television.
It hasn't hit Twitter either, so there's the big one, Twitter.
So anyway, there was no mention of Brock Lesnar on Sunday night's broadcast, but there was lots to discuss. Let's start with the main event picture. First of all, Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. What did you think of the actual match and the structuring of this show? Because this went way over time. This went till about 20 after 11 Eastern time. And we got the match between Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, with Rollins winning the title, and we'll get into what happened afterwards. But the match itself, what were your thoughts?
I enjoyed the match. I mean, it started off a little slow to my liking because these two obviously had an issue. I would have maybe for the first minute or two a little bit of a hotter start. But that being said, the match again told a good story. It built to a great ending. The psychology behind the match I thought was just fine. The ending. The thing that surprised me though was the clean nature in which Seth won. I mean, it wasn't technically really clean because if you look back at the scenario, Roman Reigns head first into the barricade.
Yes.
Causing the doctor to come over and check on him. So, Seth Rollins going and attacking him while he's being looked after is technically a heelish tactic.
And Roman, I mean, up until that spot, Roman was certainly working subtle heel in this match.
Yes.
And it was very much, subtle babyface by Rollins, and then you flipped it towards the ending sequence there with Rollins. What did you think of the one spot? We were discussing this on Sunday night. Roman Reigns going for the spear right into a pedigree by Rollins. I thought that was an excellent spot. Yeah. I thought that could have been the finish. I just thought it looked so well. I understand he didn't hook both arms. I still thought it looked great watching from the angle where it happened live. And then they went right to another pedigree follow-up, and that was the finish. So I don't know if they felt they didn't get enough of the pedigree, that they had to redo it to get to the finish, but I thought it looked really good, and that was a great spot. Yeah. And if they were going to have a future match, I almost would have saved that, but they might not have that opportunity.
Yeah, I know obviously it was a little bit of a monkey wrench thrown into the finish, but I agree. I love that spot. I thought it looked fantastic.
It's really clever, and it looked good watching it.
Yeah, and it's always interesting. It's coming up with creative ways to counter someone's finishing move while hitting your own finishing move. Like, there'd always be like, how do you one thing I was, way back in the day, I was always thinking about how does Randy Orton get an RKO on John Cena out of the attitude adjustment, stuff like that, and make it look cool. The going for the curb stomp into the RKO that they did,
which was excellent.
Which was excellent.
Of course, the Evan-born shooting star.
Still to this day, phenomenal. So,
which is one of those that, not to sidetrack here, I wish so much, and it, the circumstances of those two performers at the time, it happened on a Raw, so I think it gets forgotten more than if it was a big match between those two on a bigger stage, which is funny because less people see the pay-per-views than the television, but television you don't always remember those little things as much, because that shooting star into the RKO and the way in which they hit it so perfectly, that's incredible. Like, that should, I don't care if the guy's not even in the promotion anymore, that should almost be in the opening of your show, just in that opening little signature.
I loved it. I thought it was great. And that's what I loved about this, is it was a creative way to combine two finishes, if you know what I mean. And I don't really have a problem with Roman Reigns kicking out of it, because it was almost like a little bit of a middle finger to the vocal crowd that wanted to see this be the finish. So they got their wish anyways a few seconds later with a traditional pedigree, but still, I thought it was. I didn't have a problem with him kicking out of that. I kind of actually, in my own warped way, got a kick out of it.
It also could have been like an interesting seed too, that here Rollins, if he had just hit the one pedigree, pins Reigns with it, which is something Hunter couldn't do at WrestleMania. And because I do feel we will get to a Hunter Rollins match at some point down the road. So Rollins wins the title, and then we have Dean Ambrose come out, who had won the Money in the Bank ladder match earlier in the night, and we will discuss that match. And Ambrose cashes in, hits a dirty deeds, and wins the title. It's poetic justice, I guess, for Seth Rollins, who won his first title the same way. Now Dean Ambrose screws him with the Money in the Bank contract cash in, and does it the very same night. So at the end of this, we have Dean Ambrose as the champion, and we're not going to get a long run with the briefcase. Good choice, bad choice, or kind of indecisive at this point?
Yeah, it's one of those deals. I want to see where it goes before I pass final judgment. Not a big fan of the cash-in, because I enjoy Jason Agnew, who mentioned it on the Law on Sunday night. I like when someone has the Money in Bank briefcase and they build that character and build towards that cash-in. This was kind of foreshadowed on the previous Monday, where Dean Ambrose says, "If I win Money in the Bank, I may cash in that night." So you had the sense that it was coming. That being said, it was almost like a sense of, we want to get all three Shield members holding the title on the same night, just to have a talking point, as opposed to having a cool moment. And the other thing that kind of caught me off guard was Dean Ambrose doing it again in heel fashion, attacking from behind. I just the way the dynamic of it kind of didn't sit well with me. I would have preferred, even Seth Rollins, when he cashed in at WrestleMania, came down the ramp.
Yes.
He didn't sneak up on anybody. Dean Ambrose snuck up on people. So it's throwing a little bit of seeds planted everywhere. Who's going to be presented as the heel? Who's going to be presented as the babyface? Like you said earlier, Roman Reigns, some subtle heel tendencies. Maybe this is where he goes full-blown heel and try to regain momentum. And for that big babyface turn that may come later on. I don't know.
Now, the WWE on Monday morning, they have announced that the draft will be taking place on the first Tuesday live edition of SmackDown on July the 19th. So they're putting all their focus onto that first SmackDown on Tuesday night. So the draft will happen the Tuesday before Battleground. The way this is laid out, do you see the scenario that the three former Shield members are split up, or can you see this continuing where all three end up on Raw, for instance?
At first, after watching the end of the pay-per-view, I thought to myself, this is definitely going to lead to a three-way match, probably at SummerSlam or something like that.
Maybe earlier. It could be the July show.
Could be the July show, right. Then I was thinking, prior to this match, that how do they get through this World Heavyweight Championship match? Is there a way they can do it where they create enough controversy? Because we still don't know if, one way or the other, whether there's going to be one World Heavyweight Champion or is there going to be a World Heavyweight Champion representing each brand. And if they want to go with two World Heavyweight Championships, how do you create enough controversy to create that scenario to logically have two World Heavyweight Champions, one for each brand? I don't think that was accomplished on Sunday night during the Money in the Bank briefcase match, during the Money in the Bank pay-per-view match, the World Championship match. So if they continue to have one world champion bouncing between both shows, you could still kind of have that triple threat match in a sense where if Rollins and Reigns are on separate brands and the champion does bounce back and forth, you can create that three-way match where the number one contender from SmackDown, number one contender from Raw, both have an opportunity at SummerSlam.
Yeah. I threw out the idea that if you do this three-way in July at the Battleground show, and we do have the problem is now the draft takes place on the Tuesday before, so this kind of doesn't give you the lead time for that, because my thinking was the draft happens earlier, and you have the story that this is the one time you're going to get to see this match. They're going separate ways afterwards. You'll never see these three in the same ring together, and that's the big hook for the July show. But with the draft not taking place now till that SmackDown on the 19th, that only gives you 5 days to really hammer home that story. But I think a three-way is still very likely that you are going to see it, and possibly as early as Battleground. Let's move on over to the actual ladder match with Dean Ambrose. Were you surprised at the outcome at all, and what did you anticipate going in versus what the result was?
For me, the only surprise was that Alberto Del Rio didn't win it like we were talking about last week.
No.
It was almost like I was half expecting it the way things were going.
Where he had his opportunities, Jimmy, and constantly. I mean, it was like this. It was like they had pulled the goalie, and all he had to do was shoot the puck in, and instead he was like moving the ladder around and setting up spots and stunts, and it was like, from just a logical standpoint here, this guy doesn't seem to have his eye on winning this match.
No, it was kind of weird. It was almost like, okay, here's my opportunity to climb up and get the briefcase, but I'm going to play Legoland and start building stuff. You know, it was
sometimes these matches can detour into that, where you still have to keep the story of the match is winning the match, and the stunts are a part of it. They're expected, but they have to be somewhat organic to revolving it around grabbing this briefcase.
Yeah, it's that old creative liberties, but in a case like that, it kind of loses its meaning. But the match itself, I thought, was very good. The challenge is always in these types of matches, because we've seen so many of them, is to be creative and innovative. And
I also like that there were 6 instead of the original 7.
Yes.
I thought that made a big difference, and I think 6 bodies was plenty. And we've seen even more than 7 in some iterations of the match. So I thought this was a good number, and you had a lot of good performers in this one.
Yeah, and everybody had their opportunity to shine or build the Legoland.
Yeah, that was quite the contraption at the end with the bridge. And
but again, there were a few cringeworthy moments where you watched and you said, ooh, that could have been
the Michinoku driver onto Owens on the ladder, where he looked like he was auditioning to be Bray's partner, just back arched.
I don't know if I recall anybody ever getting slammed. I've seen people slammed on the ladder, splashed on the ladder, RKO'd on the ladder, but not while it was turned on its side.
Yeah,
I think that was the first time I've ever seen somebody slammed on the ladder that way, which obviously.
Maybe there's a reason why it's happened so infrequently in the history of professional wrestling spots.
But boy, is Kevin Owens very flexible, because he was like,
I thought Kevin Owens was great in this match. Yeah. I thought he was great on this show. That backstage segment with him, Jericho, Del Rio, and Todd was excellent. I thought in terms of backstage skits, that was one of the better ones I can recall. I mean, we were watching this pay-per-view just laughing throughout this segment. I mean, these three were just out there, and it felt like they were just playing off of one another. And that, to me, is when I could care less if that segment was written or if it was completely ad-lib. It felt like a totally natural conversation where these three were just playing off the words each were saying. It was never, okay, these guys are reciting and they're just taking turns speaking. This is a great backstage segment, and that's why with Kevin Owens not winning this match, this guy is always going to stay over in my mind, because he is such an incredible talker, and you put him on commentary, and that does as much for him as a match does for him. He's an incredible performer, and I do hope that they don't just keep him in one spot for too long, but he has a gift that few have.
Absolutely. And, you know, we talked about before how sometimes there are certain superstars that don't need a title to get themselves over, and Kevin Owens didn't need the briefcase to get himself over. Would it have been extremely entertaining seeing him with the Money in the Bank briefcase for however long he would have held it?
Oh, it suits him so perfectly, that character where he comes out and can just suddenly the babyface champion regains his composure and he's off. He just takes off as the coward. I mean, he's a guy that can get away doing that, and it works perfectly with his character and the promos, of course. It was a very good ladder match, I thought. I thought these guys did a really great job of putting together a lot in this, and Ambrose gets the win, and then we know what happened afterwards with the cash-in afterwards. John Cena and AJ Styles, they went about 22 or so minutes, lengthy match between these two, and it ended with the club getting involved and then AJ capitalizing and getting the win over John Cena. I thought it was important that AJ Styles won the first match if you're going to continue this, so I was glad the right outcome occurred. What did you think about the interference?
I think, again, it's one of those situations, it all depends on what they do next. It's my old golf theory. You can hit a line drive off the tee, right down the middle, 300 yards. It's all about your approach shot next, what you do next. So I see this going to a maybe John Cena squeaks out a win in their rematch, which I'm assuming is coming. And then you have your rubber match. And if this leads to a rubber match where AJ Styles finally gets that solo one-on-one win against John Cena, then what happened on Sunday night makes sense. If it's just a way to get, if it's a kind of like a repeat of the Kevin Owens situation where Kevin Owens wins the first match of the series and then loses the next two, I think that'll turn off more people than it did with the Kevin Owens situation.
Yeah, this almost leads to something like a cage match or something that will keep Anderson and Gallows out the next time.
Right.
So that could be an option for whether it's Battleground, wherever they go next with them. And it also gives Cena some opponents on television. He can go through Gallows and Anderson, even take them out so that they aren't there next month. So the program continues. I thought it was a very good match.
Excellent.
John Cena, though, I mean, they've been in HD since 2008, and yes, that improves the picture quality. It also picks up the sound significantly, and that guy is just... My God, I know he's learned Mandarin. I hope he can learn sign language next.
Yeah. It's too bad more superstars didn't speak Mandarin, because then he can call spots that way.
Maybe all his opponents should learn just enough in Mandarin, and then he can communicate in that language.
But here's the thing, too. Obviously, you know, because it's more prevalent when John Cena's in the ring, but there were other times throughout the pay-per-view where I heard others.
Oh, yeah. This is not exclusive to John Cena.
There was one time in particular with Dolph Ziggler where you just heard clear as day, do your pose. And I went, oh, man, it's like, is that because the audio obviously picks up a lot more, but maybe the crowd was a little quiet too. And it's surprising, especially during the Cena AJ Styles match, because the crowd was pretty loud throughout pretty much the entire match. They were with it, which goes to show you that if you get a crowd emotionally invested in a match, it doesn't matter what you do in that match. You don't have to do 450s and 76 super kicks and have a super kick party and Meltzer drivers and all this stuff. It's about engaging your audience, and these two had them right from the start.
I thought AJ Styles looked tremendous in this match. I
love him as a heel. Sorry, I'm sorry to cut you off, but AJ Styles with that cocky attitude, I think he's at his best.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, he has a style where he can be a great babyface, but I feel he's an even better heel. Yeah. I'm completely with you. I really like him in that role, and this was a very strong match between the two. Other things from the show that stood out. I mean, those were the three big matches, and the rest was there was a lot of filler on this show, and we went. This was a lengthy pay-per-view, like 4 hours and 20 minutes if you watch the kickoff. One notable thing was Charlotte and Dana Brooke defeating Natalya and Becky Lynch, and then was Natalya turning on Becky Lynch. I think a legitimate surprise going with that.
Yep.
And it didn't completely come out of nowhere, and you had these hints on television where it was these two constantly telling Dana, Charlotte is going to turn on you, she's going to turn on you, and just presenting Natalya and Becky as best friends. So they lose the match. You can understand why Natalya is frustrated, attacks her partner, and even seemed conflicted at the end. She was in near tears as she's leaving the ring. But I thought it was this was a swerve that you didn't necessarily see coming, but are the kind that you sit down and think, and you can totally see this coming.
Yeah, a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B, but I really like the aggression in Natty at the end.
Yeah, it looked great.
It looked fantastic. It looked like a legit beating. I haven't seen women fight like that. Well, since my Gino days, way back up at Wasaga Beach. But anyways, that's a different story. But
should have watched Valerie Letourneau and Joanne Calderwood on Saturday night from Ottawa, Jimmy.
Yeah, see, I was kind of busy, unfortunately. No, but I thought it was great. It looked good. It felt good. It felt like a real beatdown. You know what I mean? Especially in this day and age where you try to, suspend that disbelief. I thought Natty did a good job of suspending that disbelief, at least for a few seconds for some people.
Yeah, and the women are one of the more interesting parts of the draft, and what they do with them is each brand going to have women? I think they almost have to at this point. They're such a part of the show that you can't just have the women exclusive to one. It certainly gives Natalya and Becky the reason to go ahead with their program, and probably opens the door now for Sasha to get involved with Charlotte if that's your plan for SummerSlam or at whatever point to do that program. Then we had Rusev retaining the title over Titus O'Neil on Father's Day with Titus's kids in the front row, and Rusev beats their dad. He taps out, and then he tells the kids that your dad is a loser.
Right.
And that was it.
See, that's a perfect Father's Day gift.
What a Father's Day.
That's amazing.
Not since Ric Flair attacked Angelo Poffo at the Great American Bash on Father's Day has a son been so sad about his father.
Unbelievable. And I didn't know Titus O'Neil's son was Strowman, but anyways, that's a... Yeah.
I guess similar hair. You're right.
Yeah. The thing about Titus O'Neil, I couldn't get really invested in this thing only because it almost seems like the WWE thought that returning from a 60-day suspension, there'd be more of a buzz around Titus O'Neil, and it just didn't happen. And it was the match was placed as the buffer match between the ladder match and the main event, so it served its purpose. It wasn't a bad match.
It was all it needed to be. It was just Rusev looking very strong, and he's kind of in this transition period where I think they're waiting for something of note for him. Like, they're certainly heating him up. He is much more serious now. They're kind of getting that stench of the League of Nations away from him, and he's just beating guys. And a bigger program is probably in his future, but he's just essentially killing time at this point. That's what it feels like.
Wouldn't it be cool if when him and Lana finally have their wedding, they show the reception, he opens up a box and a snake comes out or something?
Oh, boy. Or a viper.
Or a viper.
There's his program.
See what we do here? You see what we do?
All these free ideas that we just throw out there. That also guarantees they'll never happen.
Never happen, yeah.
Any other impressions from the show that stood out for you?
I thought the tag team match, the opening tag team match was pretty good, except for the bit of a cluster at the end. It got really...
A lot of bodies, and everyone was on a different page for about 90 seconds to 2 minutes there near the end.
And if you want to get technical, the wrong guy got pinned. The illegal guy got pinned.
Wow, that's a guy watching with referee eyes.
Yeah, see, it was like it was when Carl Anderson kind of tagged himself in, but he tagged himself in with the Vaudevillain. I think it was
English.
He tagged English on the back, and so it should have been. Whoever it was.
Anderson was the legal guy because English got pinned by Kofi.
Right.
Yes. So it should have been. Well, maybe that is an out for Aiden English on Raw.
See.
Probably not, though.
Probably not.
But let's give him the benefit of the doubt.
Well, wait. We'll leave Raw and we'll save it for SmackDown because SmackDown needs something.
Where are your thumbs on this show, Jimmy? I thought a thumbs up show overall. There was a lot that happened on this show.
Yep.
I thought all three matches that people were tuning in for delivered.
Exactly.
And that was what the show was built around, was three matches. And you got a surprise title change at the end on top of it, which leads to a lot of interesting things coming out. I think with this show, I think they wanted to present something big, and Monday night, all the playoffs are over now, so you should get a little artificial bump for the Raw number, and hopefully some interest when you do something like an Ambrose title change. Yeah. But they've got their work cut out for them with Ambrose. This is not a guy that was just so hot that we need to put the title on him. It was, hopefully this title can really kickstart this guy who has really stumbled the last few months from where he was a year ago.
Especially coming out of that WrestleMania match with Brock Lesnar, where it absolutely did nothing for him. It's going to be interesting because he still does get a good positive reaction from the crowd, but that doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to move the needle going forward. So it's interesting whether this is...
He needs to be a lot less goofball now, too.
Yeah, definitely with that title. And maybe this is a case where they're hoping that the title makes the man instead of the man making the title. So, again, going forward, we're going to see. You said it's going to be a challenge. and especially with the character. I'll put it this way. It's funny because my wife happened to sit down and watch the main event with me, and she's not a big wrestling fan, but at the end, after Dean Ambrose cashed in, she was less than enthusiastic because she said, in her mind, she sees more to tune into with Roman Reigns to her.
Okay.
You know, and this is coming from someone who's not like a diehard hardcore wrestling fan. This is my wife who only watches because I have to. But anyways, she enjoys watching Roman Reigns, whether it's because of his looks, whatever the case may be. But she enjoys Roman Reigns, so it makes me think that, again, casual fans view it differently, as we know, than hardcore fans. So, you know, you have Dean Ambrose appealing to that 18 to 35 demographic, male demographic, which is a coveted demographic, of course. But you also, to grow your company, you still need to bring in that casual audience that normally wouldn't tune in. You want them to tune in regularly, women, children, whoever it may be.
Yeah, and
this is going to be a challenge, I think, with a guy like Dean Ambrose as your champion to get that casual audience to tune in.
Well, there's a lot going on in the next month for this company. It's 5 weeks until their next pay-per-view. Of course, the draft is July 19th, and that weekend is Battleground. And what easier way to hook casual fans, Jimmy, than saying that we have a 4+ hour pay-per-view on July 24th, followed by a 3-hour Raw the next night, and now SmackDown is 2 hours on Tuesday nights. I mean that to me is how you grow your casual audience. Is hey, you want to follow this product? That's the kind of dedication you got to have. 3 nights in a row coming up next month. But we will be here for a preview of Battleground next month. You can follow him at Jimmy Korderas, at Law Radio, and we will chat with you next time here on the Law and Fight Network.